Tonight on Nova, in the waters of the Eastern Mediterranean lies the oldest shipwreck in the world.
What do you have, Robin?
I've never ever seen gold like that underwater.
Are you serious?
Scientists are now searching the remains of the wreck to unlock the secrets it has held for over 3,000 years. Journey with these underwater archaeologists as they discover the history hidden in the ancient treasures from the deep. Deep beneath these clear, calm waters of the Eastern Mediterranean lies an ancient vessel, buried here for more than 3,000 years. This ship set sail from an unknown port and foundered a few hundred feet off the rocky coast of present-day Turkey. The possessions of the crew and passengers and the ship's cargo, enough tin and copper to forge the bronze weapons for an entire army, were trapped on the floor of the sea. Who were the seafarers who plied the Mediterranean when King Tut ruled over Egypt? Where was their port of origin, and what was their destination on their final fateful journey? Except for Egyptian tomb paintings, little direct evidence of these ancient sailors exists. Now, scientists have a unique opportunity to explore a shipwreck that has remained untouched for more than 33 centuries, and to unravel the mysteries of these Bronze Age traders, early masters of metal technology, a vanguard of modern culture. In the fall of 1983, members of the Institute of Nautical Archaeology arrive in Texas, bringing sketches of the wreck that dates back to the 14th century BC. George Bass, professor at Texas A&M University and the father of underwater archaeology, will head this team of scientists and divers. Don Fry, a physicist, is president of the Institute, and Jack Kelly, an independent oil producer, is a founder of the Institute. Jamal Pulak is a Turkish doctoral student at Texas A&M.
So many ingots on this record is unbelievable. There are probably more ingots on this record than all ingots in the world combined.
Why do you think it's 14th century BC?
Well, now look at this. This is a tomb painting from the time of King Tut.
Oh, it's the same kind.
From preliminary drawings made during a brief survey trip to the wreck in the summer of 1983, the team can identify and date many of the artifacts from the ship.
And I think this is the most diagnostic of all.
What's that?
Pilgrim flask.
Oh.
And look at this.
You know,
look at this. Look at this. Look at this.
Tomb painting.
Look at this.
Oh, it's
14th century.
What about the big jars? See, there's 6 of them here. And they're really big, you know, the big storage jars. I don't know if they're for water or what, but they roll downhill.
Yeah, this is the largest.
Is it as tall as a diver?
It's about 5 feet tall, would you say?
Yeah.
What's this here?
This is a big stone anchor. It's really big, maybe 600 pounds.
Are there more?
Yeah, right there. There's another one. See?
Well, how long is this, the whole thing?
It must be about 60 feet.
This is a ship, not a boat like the other. This is a ship. It's unbelievable. When are we starting to excavate?
Next summer.
Next summer.
Well, that gives us the winter to get ready, and get the permit. I can't wait.
In the summer of 1984, Bass and his team prepare for the excavation of a site more than 150 feet beneath the sea. The Verazon, a well-equipped research vessel, will provide the expedition with essential technical support. Scientists, divers, and students, 24 people from half a dozen countries, arrive to take part in this remarkable adventure.
We have some uprights in those holes over there, sockets. We can't put much uprights here.
Could we go off right there?
Okay.
I love it on different levels. First of all, there's the comradeship, which we all feel. We come out to an isolated place, cut off from the rest of the world. We have to send for food and water every day, many miles away. We build a camp where we live as a family that depends on one another. And when we dive, our lives depend on one another. We have such a variety of machinery and techniques and people that make it interesting. Physicians and artists and photographers and dive masters and mechanics and boat captains and archaeology students, of course, always come with us. I think to go back now and do a land excavation with only archaeologists on the staff would seem really very tame by comparison. Then there's the intellectual level. To me, the most interesting period of history is the Bronze Age. That's the beginnings. People were learning to write. They were mixing copper and tin together to make bronze. They didn't have to depend on stones and bones for the first time. They were having monumental sculpture and great fortification walls and things that we can picture and associate in a way they're the first modern men. And then there's the emotional level, the thrill of discovery, to be able to just sweep some sand away with your hand and see something that no one has seen for 3,000 years. Any dive, this can happen. You can see something that no one's eyes have looked upon for millennia.
The remains of this ancient ship will perhaps shed light on the history of its time and help to resolve a debate within archaeology. For 25 years, George Bass has maintained that ships like this one were Canaanite or Phoenician, hailing from ports of the Middle East. Other archaeologists have argued that they were Mycenaean, from Bronze Age Greece. Because these ships carried mainly raw materials, copper and tin ingots, ivory, spices, and foodstuffs from all over the Mediterranean, it has been difficult to trace and verify their nationality. Now, this ship, with its wealth of artifacts, its cargo and the possessions of its crew and passengers, could provide essential evidence to support Bass's claim.
They're everywhere. But they're that's the most exciting dive I've ever made. Wasn't it for you?
Oh yeah, just uncovered 8 right there in front of me.
Okay, I just keep going. I keep going.
These archaeologists work 150 feet and more beneath the sea, depths that push and challenge the limits of safe diving, so they rely on elaborate support equipment. This is called a telephone booth. Once positioned near the ocean bed and filled with air, it functions as a communications link with a Verizon, and if a diver is in distress, as an emergency air chamber.
This morning, then, the first dive will be Jack and Oshkin. They're going to do a 20-minute dive and try to get the rest of the telephone booth put together and take down a single tank and just tie it to one of the legs loosely so that a diver in trouble can get to it. Now, a word about what we're doing today. We're working in the upper part of the wreck, and we're finding out it's just thick with amphoras and ingots and so forth. And so I want you just to hand fan down the slope. And those of you who are new at hand fanning, this doesn't do any good at all. It has to be a sweeping motion with your hand in one direction where you raise your hand out of the dust each time and then clear it off with your arm in big swoops like that. Now, don't worry about being overly rough when you're on tops of amphoras, because you'll never find a small object like a weight or a cylinder seal or a scarab up high in the sand. They sink down. But once you get to the top of the level of the amphoras, then you want to slow down when you get in between them and do that very gently. Something that could easily be overlooked would be these stone weights we thought were just pebbles at Cape Galedonia until we got enough of them to see that they formed a pattern. So these are no bigger than the end of your finger, just little stones. The smallest object can be very valuable. A scarab could date the wreck for us. So when you airlift, be careful that you don't let anything go up into the airlift except for sand and sediment. Now remember that each of you is responsible for your own area. Take detailed notes and remember about narcosis. At that depth, you're going to be confused, so plan your dive in advance. Rehearse it with your partner if you need to. You've only got 20 minutes on the wreck twice a day. You can't afford to waste time. I do want to stress we're working beyond the limits of air diving. We're starting at 140 feet and going down to 170 feet. So watch your partner going up and down the shot line especially. That's the most critical point. If you're down in the bottom, go in the phone booth if you have a problem. You're up the top, of course, you can reach the decompression stop mouthpieces. But in between, you've got a long way where there's no air. We've had now, in our 24 years of working, we've had one bad case of bends and one embolism. They both took place on the decompression stop, where the diver lost consciousness 20 feet down, just decompressing. In case we should have a diving accident, an embolism of the bends, we don't know who's going to be underwater, and so I want as many of you as possible to be familiar with the controls, how to go in through the locks and so forth. Then someone will go inside and pretend he's a victim. I want everyone to get used to the noise and heat in the recompression chamber. We will always have one person handling the air, one at the controls, a timekeeper watching the table saying how many minutes to go to 60 feet, or if we have to go to 165 feet, it just open the air all the way, even if the diver's eardrums burst. That means it's something very serious, you have to get a lot of pressure on immediately.
Okay, it's 20 minutes on the bottom, 2 minutes at 20 feet, and 7 minutes on the 10-foot stop.
22 and 7, okay.
Ready? And go.
This is Don, over.
Oh, hi, Don. Can you tell George to get over there? Go to the boat, quick. I got something really interesting.
What do you have, Robin?
I shouldn't be the person to say this. Jamal and Jack should. Because I just went to have a little look at what they found.
And you couldn't keep your hands off.
I've never ever seen gold like that underwater.
You joke. Well,
I have never ever.
where?
I've never ever.
Are you serious?
I am not joking. It's a large cup. I'm sure of it. Just look at it.
I said there'd be a gold bowl. I said there'd be elephant tusks, right?
I told Toof to have a look, and we could just see tiny little bit. I wrote gold filigree on here. And
This is no tramp steamer.
I tell you, the insurance brokers took a pounding.
Now, the reason I brought you here is that I cleaned upslope and uncovered a perfectly preserved pilgrim flask, which is grayish black, and so my guess is it could be silver. So we have a Canaanite jar Mycenaean thing, a gold cup, maybe a silver pilgrim flask. I mean, and ivory. It's incredible. But this assemblage is so unique. I don't want to excavate it the way I normally would. I want to get it all opened up so we can get photographs to show 200 years from now I won't be able to see what it looked like. That means that we're going to have very fragile things out in the open for a long time. Now, in an instance like this is where I have to take it on myself as director. I can't worry about hurt feelings. There's only one person that's going to excavate in that area, and that's Jamal. Because I think he really underwater understands exactly what he's finding. And if it takes 3 weeks before we bring up the first object, I don't care. You know that that photograph of that stuff opened up is going to be in every book on archaeology that has anything to do with the Bronze Age. It's just a remarkable thing.
What we're trying to do here is literally use nothing more than the techniques of aerial photogrammetry, which have been used for a number of years for making topographic maps. And what we do is set up a horizontal bar underwater to simulate a flight line. Then we take a camera and we sequentially move it to a variety of different positions along there. Every 2 pictures taken from the bar forms a pair of stereo photographs. And using them with a plotter allows us to record the 3-dimensional position and orientation of every object on the wreck. Often the data we get from the stereo photographs isn't perfect, so we survey a wreck with a network of long-distance measurements to help tie the plan together.
We invented the system of stereo mapping back in the 1960s, and we've now got it to such an art that our underwater plans are just as accurate as any made on land. You have to take some, measurements from X, is that all?
Yes, sir. Three measurements is all from point X.
This one hasn't had any measurement at all on it, either 9 or X.
So we want to measure those max, isn't that right?
If while he's doing that, if you could take a clipboard and simply write down the maximum diameter, and then that'll make it easier to actually put those on the plan. The plan itself is critical to our work, since once you've excavated a site, you've really destroyed it forever. And knowing the exact position of an object may tell you if it was cargo or personal possession, if it was from a cabin area or the hold of the ship. If we didn't have extremely accurate plans of thousands of small wood fragments, we would never be able to restore the actual hulls of the ships as we're able to do. We're going to try to understand the ship through the objects it carried, but the objects themselves stay in the Bodrum Museum in Turkey. So we have to have very accurate drawings to take back to the university to compare to drawings in other publications and also to prepare for our own publications.
After detailed surveying of the site, the archaeologists are ready to retrieve and examine artifacts from the wreck.
But the hole doesn't go all the way through, it doesn't seem. So
Yes, it does. I have one here that I took off, and the hole does go all the way through.
That's what.
See, I said there were pinheads.
The hole didn't go all the way through.
I think what we have is a bead.
If it's beads, why are they all concreted together this way? Why didn't they just disperse?
It was perhaps coated with something.
George, do you know what Egyptian paste was? They made fire
Faience.
out of it.
Well,
Faience is
I don't know what it would
Faience
look like
is
under a
silicone.
microscope.
pulverized quartz, which is fused under an alkali, so it's
But
more like.
some of this looks like it's
opaque glass.
rosin.
It
Beads
could
and
be
rosin.
just coloring material, something sticky, and it has sort of dispersed. And you can see through there, it has fractures in it as glass gets.
This is certainly not organic. But this, I can't believe it's glass.
No, I think it's glass.
All of the artifacts are excavated with care, for each represents a precious piece of an intricate puzzle. The job of retrieving them is time-consuming and can be arduous. A single copper ingot weighs as much as 60 pounds, but divers are aided by the buoyancy of the water. Balloons filled with compressed air become elevators that can carry more than 300 pounds to the surface. It will take thousands of dives over 4 or 5 years, roughly 3,000 hours underwater, to recover the wealth of materials trapped on the seabed.
I think archaeology is misunderstood by most people. They think we're just interested in the objects. Archaeologists are not interested in objects themselves, but what they can learn from them.
Got it?
We really don't know how trade in the Bronze Age worked. We don't know if shipments of the type we're excavating right now were sold for profit or whether there were simply royal exchanges between kings and pharaohs. So this whole area in here can be as rich as this.
Right.
And this is obviously deposited after the ingots.
Right.
This is just bedrock. I would also like to get the big pithos out as soon as possible. Now, I'd like to get it up where we can actually start taking samples of the pollen and sediment inside.
They're all pouring out the big pithos.
What?
Yes.
The pithos is full of
Yes,
pottery?
4 of them already, and they're pouring out. Pithos'un içinden dökülüyor.
Oh, wow.
Well, I can say that this ship was definitely coming from Cyprus, because this is all Cypriot pottery.
Just looking into the Cypriot book yesterday, and there was that book of Vassos Karaoke. Is it like a mail order, Captain?
Order one up.
You just look in there and decide what you want. Left underneath it.
Oh. You know, if we found one piece of pottery that well preserved on the Cape Villadora, how excited we'd have been. One piece that well preserved. They're just coming up by the bucket now.
Yes, George, let's go.
Let's go. Let's go dive. Were they stacked in there in any order or just jumbled, or could you tell?
Oh, definitely stacked.
No chance an octopus pulled them in?
No way.
Because we found pottery pulled into amphores before.
No, it's far too orderly and tidy.
I would have thought this large jar, this pithos, was for water. They're shown on the decks of Canaanite ships and Egyptian tomb paintings, but we had no idea that they were cargo containers.
Fantastic. Oh, look at that.
Be very careful. Wait, very, very careful. Okay. Oh my God.
Look at that. Oh, God. We got some buckets ready. Wow.
They just, well, look at that stuff. Look at that stuff. They didn't come out of a tomb better than that. More than
I don't believe it. I think we have the stern area. What's that? One is not going to find jewels in the bow. It's like a Egyptian vulture pendant, but it's not Egyptian. Well, let's send it on the lady. Look
at the beads that they put on. It seems like
I think somebody, I hope the captain didn't make a call.
doesn't look like a dog.
For his own sake.
I'm glad you were on that dive. I really am.
You're glad, right? What do you think? I didn't swallow my mouthpiece.
Robin's going to assign the dives again this afternoon, and Jamal will have something to say about the work in the various areas, but I would like to find out what's going on in each of the areas, starting with Jamal's area.
Big pilgrim flask I have cleared around it, and it is loose. It's not concreted to bedrock, but I still have to excavate around it carefully because that's where I've been finding those delicate things like beads.
Now, Robin, down in here, you've got these ingots out, I think.
Yeah, that has actually cleared this lower row, but the upper row has another level underneath it.
And Yashar, do you think that the shipwreck is stopping there, or do you think it's continuing under the
I
sand?
think it's not much sand. I found bedrock.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Under this overhang, there are ingots, both copper and tin.
Another thing about the tin is it's coming out of the rock, some of it in powdery form that's almost falling apart, and there's quite a bit of crystalline form as well, totally crystallized.
Do you know, we talk so easily about these tin ingots. They're the first ever found from this period. They're the earliest tin ingots I think we have. And now we're just talking very casually.
I was going to say, we have to, you know,
be exercised real careful.
They are as valuable as the gold objects, obviously, because this is really the story of the Bronze Age tin and copper.
You're still convinced it's glass? Yeah. So what's happening is the glass is losing all the ash and lime and the...
Nobody knew there were ingots of glass this early. I said 25 years ago, the reason we couldn't identify Canaanite traders is because they were trading raw materials. But I didn't expect to find raw glass. I don't think anyone knew that glass ingots were actually traded this early. I've seen it on the seabed, so I know, but I haven't seen it up close.
The goblet, yeah.
What do you make of this? It's coming clear as it dries.
The decoration? It's a typical foliate band, and I think it has the ivy leaf pattern. Okay. See and here's the dot. See the dot up at the top of the ivy leaf?
Yeah. And that's what?
With the wavy band. Yeah. The only problem is that this is red paint rather than the glossy seal black paint that was typically Mycenaean. But it looks like a local imitation because it doesn't have the same
It's 14th century, though.
It is 14th century.
That's what matters. That's what matters. This is the last thing. This is the Pilgrim flask. And this is 14th century because it's like the one found on the survey.
Yes. And it's the same date as the lamp.
As the lamp.
The lamps also.
Okay, so the dates are all matching up.
2A, the lamps are 2A. That type of handle on the Pilgrim flask is 2A.
The dates are matching, but the
it's a different
nationalities are not matching. I mean,
you know which this Pilgrim flask is how it's using?
I think we're going to find out if the contents, which are still there, have any seeds or organic material we can say for the first time. They're just not found on land, usually with contents, and so here it's still like a seal. The people who were trading these amphoras were not trading them for the amphoras themselves, it was for the contents. The contents were more interesting to the people in antiquity, whereas today it's the pottery container that's interesting to the archaeologists, which is sort of the reverse of the way it should be.
Here it comes!
Underwater, you find organic materials extremely well preserved. We get seeds, we get bits of wood, we get inorganic things such as glass beads in these amphoras. We found another one that had orpiment, which is yellow arsenic. They used that as a coloring or pigment in Egypt about this time. Whatever has drifted in with the silt, this includes pollen, and by pollen analysis, we may be able to trace the route of the ship by the kinds of weeds. We know the prices of commodities such as tin and copper in the Bronze Age, and we know the prices of olive oil and wine. So if we can know what these amphoras contained, then we can perhaps come up with a rough estimate of the financial magnitude of the loss of this ship.
Maybe a little too large to be safe.
Like a pig.
We'll see.
Is this one okay?
I want to introduce our guest, Professor Melnick from Bryn Mawr. We first worked together at Gordian back in 1957, who's here from her excavation at Elmela. There's nothing like that's been found before, has it?
Neither you nor I have seen quite the likes of it. So these are ingots of glass. And then this they're going to use to make glass objects, jewelry.
I presume that they would use that. They melted and put threads and make something on a core.
This is beautifully preserved. It's quite a hard fabric, sort of stony. But these would sell. I guess you could sell these to Mycenaeans. And they're so clean. Look a little affected.
Well, those were definitely stacked inside the pithos. I could put my hand in there and count them. I counted like about 6 or 7 that were nested within each other.
So it's sort of a variety store.
If the tin was in with these, it suggests it was packed at the same time, and presumably these were packed on Cyprus, which I suppose suggests that the tin also was packed on Cyprus, but tin doesn't come from Cyprus, so it must have been an intermediate stage or something.
But the Cypriots must have been very good at that, as the people of the Levant were.
Is the only thing that's really absolutely Mycenaean in this. That's certain. That's 100%.
But you're in a cosmopolitan period. We make Mycenaean in a lot of places, even in Troy.
But I keep going back to the question of where was the ship taking all this? It's a fantastic find.
Yeah, right.
Many more.
Yeah. This is really, I think, the last time I want to be an active excavator.
Oh, you can't mean that.
Oh, yeah. No more archaeological diving. Quarter of a century, 120 to 150 feet, twice a day, 6 days a week. That's a lot of diving. And, you know, you don't like to see an athlete get old. And Jim Mull can excavate better than I can now. You know, it's his turn.
Won't be any fun without you.
Oh, I'll come and sit on the deck and don't worry, I'll be here. But I need the time now to study it and publish it and make sense out of it, or there's no point in raising all these things.
How long are we going to be digging here?
It's 5 years, I'll bet, 7 years, something like that. We found out over the years that we spend 2 years on research and conservation and publishing. For every month we spend diving. And this is something most people don't realize, that, you know, it looks like finding things is a lot of fun. They don't realize that it takes us something like 15 years to figure out what all this means. At the end of each summer, we only have field notebooks, catalogs, photographs, plans, drawings, but these don't tell a story. They're only clues to solving the mystery. Instead of visiting all the museums in the world, we can just go to our library, and that's the equivalent, because everything in those museums, everything that's been excavated, has been published by the archaeologists who dug it up. And you then can compare the pictures of the things excavated at that site with the things that you're trying to understand from your own site. We're finding Cypriot and Syrian and Mycenaean Greek pottery all together, and it was all being shipped in one day. That ship went down on a specific date in antiquity, and so we may be able to tie together the dating of pottery across the Eastern Mediterranean more closely than has happened before, and this will be of great benefit to land archaeologists. And what about the wood?
Well, this is just before you left, the last day that you saw it, and we've removed all these bow stones. And this is the keel, the first strake and the second strake. And here we see parts of the mortise and tenon joinery.
This ship was made like Greek and Roman ships were made.
Exactly. That was so amazing about it. And it's 1,000 years later, and it's identical to a shipwreck that's been excavated from 400 BC.
This is the first time we've known how ships at the time of Ulysses, the time of the Trojan War, were built. We had no idea what the resin in many of our amphoras was. And Kurt Beck at Vassar College has been able to say very definitely that this is myrrh and frankincense. We don't depend just on other archaeologists and excavations to help us understand what we found. We have to also go to scientists in other disciplines. We write to the people, we send samples, we send photographs, we send drawings. They answer, they tell us what we have found, and we then have to interpret what they've discovered to make sense of our entire site. Except for the copper, most of the cargo could have come from the Syro-Palestinian coast, even though it had to arrive there from overseas or overland, like the tin probably came from Afghanistan. The myrrh and the frankincense we know have to have come from South Arabia or Somalia and Africa all the way up, but we know from ancient texts they were both shipped out of this area. Now, the ivory is okay right here. We had elephants and hippopotamuses in this part of the world still at that time. And Bob Brill has analyzed the glass ingots, and the glass is chemically identical both to Mycenaean Greek glass and to Egyptian glass of that period. So that means both places were importing it from wherever our glass ingot was made. Then wherever it was loaded on, the ship sailed across to Cyprus and picked up its load of copper, and then from there it went on to Kosh, where it sank. But I'm not sure on its way where. I have no idea at this time.
Well, how about Kosh itself? And then to Rhodes, even perhaps to Mycenae in Greece, Komos in Crete, and complete the circuit down the north of Africa, Egypt, up to the Syro-Palestinian coast again.
So maybe they were just stopping, unloading a little bit, putting on some more, and we'll never know the destination because there was none. It was just continuously going around in a circle. When we first found this bronze disc, this is actual size, we didn't know what it was. Now I find out they're in Cyprus, they're in Syria, and so you had a chance to just do a little reading on them. And so what have you come up with? For example, what did Hall, when she found one in Crete, think it was?
That it's a miniature shield and refers to similar objects found by a man named Hogarth at another place in Crete.
Mr. Menachietti, what does Secunda think?
It's attached as part of the armor of a horse.
What do you think, Mr. Pope?
Well, Blades and Buchman both give modern examples of finger symbols as far back as 500 BC.
But Jamal has thought they were too large to be worn on your fingers, but now he's in agreement because of something we've just seen this morning in the library. I have an invitation to speak at the Rockefeller Museum in Jerusalem, and as long as I'm there, why not take the opportunity to try to trace the route of the ship? Go to a Canaanite port city like Tel Dor, cross over to Cyprus, visit a Bronze Age port like Kityan, and visit the archaeologists who are doing the work. Then after that, I could learn a lot.
Are you going to take a catalog of the artifacts with you?
Yes, and I will look for parallels in the museums. That'll be a wonderful opportunity. I want you to be in charge of the excavation next summer until I get there. I'm going to start by going to the British Museum because I've never seen the Tel El Amarna tablets, these clay documents that talk about the trade in copper and glass ingots and myrrh and even ivory. And I want to talk to Christopher Walker, who is a specialist in all this. Okay, thanks. Now, which are these tablets?
These are the two tablets written from Cyprus to the pharaoh in Egypt referring to shipments of copper, and this comes from North Syria and refers to a delivery of ingots of glass.
Do you accept that word, Elipaku, you pronounce it?
Elipaku.
Yes.
It seems to be generally accepted now as meaning glass ingots, yes.
Where on the tablet does it talk about 500 talents of
This is
copper?
divided by rulings which run right the way across the tablet. And the section which actually refers to the 500 tablets of copper is this third section down on the front side of the tablet. Just these 6-line report saying, don't worry or don't complain about the fact that you haven't got so much. Our problem right here is at the present moment there's been a plague and there aren't enough people simply physically making copper. So 500 talents is as much as we can send you at the moment, and please don't worry about it.
Thank you. I've never seen so many authors at one time of books that I own, and so it's very thrilling for me to be able to speak to you. Long before there were shepherds or farmers in the Eastern Mediterranean, there were sailors. Before people lived in villages or could make pottery or write or had metallurgy, they could cross the Aegean. If they lost only one ship in each year of each decade, of each century, of each millennium since they first set out, we would have 10,000 shipwrecks in the Eastern Mediterranean. Luckily, some are extremely well preserved, and those can be excavated archaeologically. That's it, that's it.
Where's that photograph you showed me before?
There it is, that's it, that's it. And the nose is just like our nose.
Right,
that's
the other side of the face we've got here.
Look.
At Jerusalem's Rockefeller Museum, George Bass compares photographs and drawings of objects from the wreck in Turkey to the Canaanite artifacts on display.
Look at the dagger. Look at the dagger. That's got to be from El Jewel. Yep. Look at that. See?
Right.
Look, it's even got the little lines on it. That is Canaanite.
You got it. This is it.
This comparison of daggers, bracelets, pottery, and other items seems to support Bass's belief that the ship was Canaanite, originating from a port in the Middle East.
Don't cry. Don't cry.
Look, finger symbols. Look, it's exactly the same curvature. This is half size, so it's about
the same thing.
Now, there's a weight that I've got a photograph of I haven't seen yet, but I think it's like that little bull weight. Now, what do we got over here? Oh, look at this.
That's your silver.
Silver bracelet.
Right.
It's
With
got
the same
thread,
decoration.
The threading, all Canaanite.
All
Canaanite.
Right.
Look. I just got a letter that Jamal said that they had found a set of tongs, and I bet they're going to be like these. Well, I don't know if this is a Canaanite ship, but it's sure.
Yeah, it visited someplace along this coast.
Archaeologists have found Bronze Age stone anchors on land built into buildings and so forth all over the Near East and in Cyprus, but at Tel Dor, anchors have come out of the sea from an actual harbor showing that Bronze Age ships anchored there at the time our ship sailed. Shelley, where did you find these four?
These 4 anchors, these 3 come from Dor, from the harbor here, and this one comes from farther up the Carmel coast.
Near where the Bronze Age ingots were found?
It's approximately halfway between here and there.
How much do you suppose this weighs, do you know?
I think it's around 200 and something.
I think it's around
180.
Kilos.
So ours on the ship will date this kind probably the best.
Oh,
we
yeah.
have.
Yeah.
But
Now the trouble is to find the ones that you found on the ship on land someplace.
You know, it almost ties it all together. because the temple was associated with the bronze working here at Kittian, or the copper industry. The town is almost in the temple, is almost like it's built out of old anchors. But they use them for floors, they're built into the walls. You know, it's the seafaring aspect along with the copper working and the religion. This is very much like what we had.
I think there is a kind of a koine in Cyprus during the 13th century BC, and this is very characteristic of this white-shaped ware. In the same way, we have the white slipware, white slip 2, where this is a developed form of the white slipware, and also the base ring ware.
Oh, that's exactly right.
Base ring 2 ware. In fact, we have all three types. And this kind of pottery was particularly favored, both in the Near East and in the Aegean.
When you were excavating Kittian, which, you know, in your report, you mentioned its export of copper.
Yes.
And that seemed to be connected with the temples there?
There was a relation between metallurgy and religion, both for religious purposes and also for sheer commercial purposes, so that the religious authorities could control the economy of the island, the backbone of which was the export of copper.
Where would you think the copper at Kittian actually came from?
The most important one is Calabasas.
Is this flag here?
Yes, that's a nice bit where you can see the green copper colour showing in it, and the gas bubbles that form in it as well.
This is what's left when they take the metal out of the ore?
Yes, that's it.
And this entire mountain is
yes,
man-made?
All of it for a long way around and a great depth below our feet.
Bodrum is really where underwater archaeology started, because Bodrum was the sponge center of Turkey, and it was the Bodrum sponge divers who found all of the wrecks we've been excavating over the years. The objects we find on these wrecks come back to Bodrum. They go on display in the museum in the Crusader Castle overlooking the town. But it's also a place where we can work on the objects, where we can clean them and draw them and study them if we need more time when we have returned from the excavations.
Robin,
good to see you.
How are you?
Fine, good to see you.
Yeah, hi there, Jack.
This is Shelley Waxman from Israel. This is Robin Pearson.
Nice to see you. Good.
How's it going?
Fine. Good. Good.
What are you doing, chipping the surface off the
yes. Well, we're trying to avoid doing that, actually. We're trying to very skillfully remove all this concretion, which is inches thick all over it.
I thought we would see a pattern that would tell us maybe where it was made, and I don't see anything on it. That's a little disappointing. Listen, can you show us where the ivory and the other things are soaking?
Yes, yeah, we can go and have a look at that right now.
What is this?
This is the hippopotamus.
We call it a tusk, but David Reese, who studies these, wrote to me and said that this is an incisor. The canines are the tusks.
Is this distilled water tin, Robin? Or?
No. What we do is just add distilled water all the time until we slowly exchange salt for distilled water. If we just did it right away, well, there's a danger of splitting and cracking taking place in the lamination.
Where's the elephant tusk?
This is the one we want.
Oh, the average.
Can you take it out?
Yeah, sure.
Is this distilled water in this one, or is it?
This is pretty much the same. It's a far greater percentage of water. Look at that.
Do you know that this is the first time I think that they've found a sort of a cut section like this? And the measurements work out exactly right for a Bronze Age cosmetics box. In other words, the diameter is right. It's the right height if you cut off the top and made a lid. There were very fancy carvings on these things from Mycenae and other Greek sites.
George, did you ever decide that that was a wall lamp for oil, or did you think it was for instance?
This is okay. Look, see, this is deep enough. You see how much water it's holding? You hold that much oil so you can put a wick in there and burn it. The thing is, they haven't found burning marks on a lot of them. And some of them are so shallow there's not enough room for oil, and they think maybe they were for incense burning, but they obviously hung from a peg on the wall.
Oh my God, look at that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, I've never seen it clean before.
I don't want to keep all this
look.
In the safe. Very soon we have new.
This was built when we came last.
Exhibition hall. It should be ready.
How did they flatten this out? And they cleaned it in the laboratory here?
Yeah, but we wanted to keep bottom as the original condition. Yeah.
If we have this much wood from the Bronze Age ship. Do you think that the Bodrum Museum can make another gallery like this?
100% we can do the same thing for Bronze Age shipwreck too.
Archaeology continues for years after the actual diving is over. We use the plans showing how the fragments were on the seabed to build models. In the meantime, the wood is being conserved in chemicals for years, and then it takes additional years to actually piece together thousands of fragments so we know what an ancient hull looked like. By doing this, we're tracing the evolution of ship construction in the Mediterranean.
After weeks of research in Europe and the Mideast, George Bass returns to the site near Kaş, Turkey, now in its second summer of excavation.
What have you learned about the wreck this year?
Want to see the areas we've uncovered first?
I'd love to see the artifacts.
Right.
What is this?
That's quartz.
Quartz?
Quartz.
Gold, amber?
Amber. We could not identify it. I
This
think
is
it's kind of
faience.
bone.
This
That's
is
faience.
faience. Agate.
Probably. And that's bone.
My God.
It's on an amber bead.
These are from probably North Syria, I think. Let me see this word.
But notice the blade shape. It's like the first one.
I have a picture of one of those with
Really?
me.
Fantastic.
Everything I heard in your letter, I Xeroxed very quickly out of books and brought them. We can identify these right away. How about the scarab?
We found one, and we found a gold frame for another one. But
You sent me that Polaroid, and the problem is that this fantastic. One gave me a date of before the wreck sank, and one gave me a date of 13th century, which of course redates everything on the wreck, if that's true, and so we just have to spend a lot of time with this.
But this is, I think, more interesting. It's another seal. We don't know the material. It might be steatite.
I haven't been surprised yet. I heard all these. Oh.
Possibly
I've never
steatite.
seen anything like this
like
before. It's
plastic.
Egyptian.
It's like wax, yes.
And it seems like a little stamp, doesn't it, for stamping?
But again, they were found
But
in the
if
same
this-
area
this-
as this and the other frame.
This is the first evidence of, to me, you know, something Egyptian. Now, you've got some tongs, so they like these?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, we wait. Now you got one of these and one of these. That's exactly the same. Has it got a bander in it?
No.
Like that? These are usually found with metalworking tools, you know, from the copper industry. They're found on Cyprus, and we have pictures of them also from the museum in Jerusalem. Look, see, this is from Cyprus and this is from Jerusalem, so it can be either Cypriot or Canaanite, either way. This is tin, right?
Yes. Oh my God.
Look, see, it's the same ingot shape. Here we got the proof. They made 10 ingots in that shape. So this is a keel, right?
That's the keel.
It listed, let us say this is the stern.
Right. It was slightly listed to starboard, so the stern collapsed in this way rather than sideways because
But,
it's
no,
upslope.
what I'm saying is, why are there anchors at the stern? Would they be carried to the bow?
No, I think this is where about midships. It's down in the hold.
If it came over this way and the big jars came out here and there's another one here and down here, that suggests that they were even higher up and fell out, which suggests a deck on the ship, doesn't it? Right. Aren't you glad I'm not down there bungling things up?
We have people to take your place. You three found the wreck. How did it happen?
Well, every year we have a survey looking for shipwrecks along the Turkish coast.
You are?
And we rely mostly on Turkish sponge divers. I know most people think that because I'm a physicist, we have some sort of exotic remote sensing devices like side scan sonar or magnetometers. But you know, there are about 100 sponge divers who go out every year, 5 or 6 of them to a boat. And they dive for 100 days, so that's 10,000 man days, and it's an hour a day, 10,000 man hours on the bottom. So that's a tremendous amount of remote sensing time. Well, this was one of the things which I was determined that we were going to be able to do because there must be Bronze Age shipwrecks along the coast. More, I mean, there must be others.
But it's marked as blue.
Oshkin goes out with me and we go to the villages and hunt either the old sponge divers or the ones who've just been out for a fresh season to see whether they've seen anything on the seabed. Lots of times the things they tell us about are just piles of rubble. They themselves don't recognize a wreck when they find it, particularly a Bronze Age shipwreck. But with this program that we've had over the last 5 years, we do them slideshows and things like that. We actually show them, you know, pictures of wrecks that we found. We try to get their confidence so that they will keep their eyes open for things and consider that they're important enough to tell us about. So when we talked to the sponge divers about the things they saw on the seabed, the conversation was almost always about the amphoras, the large storage jars that were characteristic of the cargo of the wrecks.
Right.
But I would always come along and say, well, now, in addition to this, you know, sometimes the cargo was made of things like this, and I would draw the picture of a Bronze Age ingot and ask these people whether they'd seen one or if they ever saw one to please be sure to tell us. As a matter of fact, that's how we really got the Bronze Age shipwreck report, because the captain was told this by one of his crewmen, and he said, well, this is what the archaeologists in Bodrum were looking for. You know, one of the things that helps us with in our relationship with these sponge divers is the fact that we have a chamber aboard the Virazon.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, the Turkish divers are economically pressed to try to get enough money in the season, so they will dive to 65 meters and twice a day, sometimes 3 times a day, and we have had a diver every year come to us for some sort of relief in the chamber.
What's the feeling the first time you went down the wreck?
The first dive on the wreck was certainly exciting, but every day when I dive on the wreck now, I think it's more exciting because we know so much more about the wreck. We know what is there, and it's been all opened out. You can see amphoras, you can see the ingots cleaned off. You know that this is the area where the gold cup came from. You know that the ivory was from over here, and the more glass ingots. And it really is, every dive is a thrill to get down there and drift down for about, you know, maybe 30 seconds and seeing nothing, and then the bottom it starts to open up, and if it's a clear day, it is such a friendly place.
I am dying to see that. I can't wait.
What was it like?
I don't know. It was just a massive impressions in one shot. I've got to digest it. I don't know. It was an emotional experience. I almost started crying underwater. I was so moved by it.
Are you going to come down with me? I don't want to be like these aging opera singers that can't hit the high notes anymore. I've been doing it for a quarter of a century. I think it's better just to stop at some point.
What do you think about the anchor? Should we remove it or should we not remove it? I was thinking,
I would leave it
equivocating.
I would leave it this
and I said, well, how many Bronze Age shipwrecks are there? Why don't we just excavate all the anchors, leave them in line, take a good photograph of the way they were stowed in the ship?
What are you going to do when you get inside that big rock, start chipping away that Mycenaean deal, and you find out that the whole huge rock is cargo?
Well, we have a bet with Carl. He says it's all cargo, and I say it's just one odd piece that's fallen in the pocket in the rock.
There's a bunch of big pockets.
And what point do you say you're not going to dive anymore? And then stick to it.
You can set it any time you want to, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to dive at all. I mean, you might not want to work on a regular basis or something, you know, diving. We have to keep on exchanging ideas about excavation back and forth. You can't certainly close a book and say that's it.
This afternoon. Afternoon dive with you.
Right, okay. All right. Fine, but you got to do a dive now.
Okay. I think I remember how. I think. When we started this excavation, I really wanted this to turn out to be a Canaanite ship. I wanted to prove certain theories, but it's just so much richer than I'd ever dreamed possible that the nationality is no longer important because it's raised new questions for us to answer. It's just so much more important than that one theory. It's opening new doors to the past. It's going to take us on a voyage of its own.
George Bass and his colleagues returned to Turkey in the summers of 1986 and 1987. It will take them years of painstaking effort to retrieve the remains of this ship and all its cargo. And only then will the real work begin, a decade or more of analyzing their discoveries in the hope of unlocking the secrets that have been buried with this ship for so many centuries.
Jamal, I'm glad I saw it.
It's different, isn't it?
It's different, and it's, you know why I didn't want to dive? Because I sure love it.